Good morning, and thank you for joining me. I'm Darcy Luma, and welcome back to our Thoughtfully Fit Thursdays, where we're going to explore today how to create your own personal user's manual. Now, this may be something you haven't heard of or thought about before, and it's actually a concept that the week before I go live, I'm always thinking about and really paying attention to what the universe provides me that might be valuable to pass along to you. And so earlier this week, I was biking with a friend, and he gave me permission to share this story. And he was talking about at work that they had hired some consultants and from Israel, and they got this guidebook. Now, the guidebook that was published by Intel USA. And he said it outlined what to expect on how to work with these consultants. And I'm going to share with you, I have some notes here, I'm going to share with you some of the things that were in this guidebook. It said, present your ideas clearly and concisely, and expect to be cut off regularly during a presentation, because Israelis prefer to ask questions and have debate and discussion in the moment, immediately, rather than waiting until the end of a presentation. And so it said it may serve you to create some pauses for those debates and those conversations. And that Israelis are generally fond of debate, and they'll discuss ideas passionately. And that if somebody was new to that conversation and walked in as a visitor, that they are often taken aback by the tone and the loudness of the discussion. And so my friend was saying that he was reading this guidebook and he's like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's me. And he was sharing how in his career, he has increased his self-awareness to understand that there is a preference and there is a default style of how he shows up, and that before he had that self-awareness, he wasn't able to necessarily communicate that to others or self-manage it depending on what the situation was. And he was laughing about how he had shared this with his wife, and she said, yeah. Well, it made me start to think about, what if there was a guidebook, a user's manual that you could create to help others know how to interact with you. So anytime you get a new appliance, whether it be a washing machine or a new blender or a bike, whatever, it usually will come with some operating instructions, a user's manual, a guidebook. Not only what to know about how to get started, but also how to troubleshoot. What happens if it won't turn on, or the battery dies, or whatever. So it led me to think about, what would that look like if you created your own personal user's manual? Not only for what they should know about how to interact with you, but also what would be most valuable and what to know about you when you're stressed, when you're under conflict, when you're feeling overwhelmed. I went to a workshop this morning that was a wonderful workshop talking about mindfulness. And she had us turn to a partner and talk about what happens when I'm stressed. And I realized for me, when I'm stressed, I get impatient, I get short, this sort of controlling, rigid Darcy comes out, this perfectionist, these tendencies that I've worked really hard to try to temper and self-manage, that when I'm stressed, all of that comes right back. And that impatience and the focus and the control take over. And one of the things I realize is in my journey, I've gotten to a place where I can self-manage that pretty well professionally. I'm still and have a long ways to go personally. When I'm with my daughters and we're late, that stress meter can go right up. As a matter of fact, a quick tangent, Josie, my 12-year-old, last week sent me an email. She forwarded it to me, and it was an article, and she said, Mom, I signed up for this, And I get an email every week, and I thought you might enjoy this one. I hope this isn't, you don't take this the wrong way, or that you're not defensive. And I read, and what she had forwarded to me was this article and all these resources about stress and pressure and what to do when you are feeling overwhelmed. And in her email, she said, you know, I know when you're late or when you have a big presentation, you get stressed out. And I thought this may be helpful. Oh my gosh, it touched my heart. And I said, honey, I replied to her and said, thank you. No, of course I'm not defensive. This is so appropriate, and I really appreciate you sharing this. And Mom's trying to work on this when I get late or overwhelmed or overworked, trying to be more calm. And so that was last week. So a couple days later, we were running late. We were going somewhere. I had this big event. I had to drop them off beforehand. And about 2 hours before we left, I said, so Mom's going to try really hard to not get all wound tight. And here's what would be really helpful for me. And we took some time to design our morning of what that was going to look like. And you know, said we have to leave by 8, so it'd be wonderful if by 7:30 we've got all the chores done, we have breakfast, everything's put away, so that last half hour you guys can chill, you can have some iPad time while I'm just meditating and having my coffee. That would be really helpful. And I brought them into that process. Very different than what a normal morning would be. Thanks to Josie sending me this article, and like, oh my God, I was embarrassed. Oh, my daughter sees my stress. This is not the mom I want to be. And it's the mom I am. And I always say, you just start where you are. So here I am. And so we had a conversation, and in some ways I said, here's what I'd like. Here's my operating instructions. Here's what I'd like to design with you guys. How does this work? And of course they had some ideas. They said, Mom, here's what we would like to request. And we had that conversation, and it was really valuable. And so when we look at how to create your own personal user's manual, it made me think back to when I worked for Senator Cole, and a couple of years in to my role, I had some realizations, and I'm debating right now, thinking out loud of how much context to provide. I don't think I need to give a lot of the background of the story. The gist of it is, the essence of the story is that I had a team meeting and said, I really want to share with you some things that I've learned about myself. And it feels a little vulnerable and a little bit hard to share, but I think based on what I'm learning in these leadership classes and feedback I'm getting from my coach, I think it might be valuable to share. And I started to let them know some of the idiosyncrasies that I had learned about myself. One of which is that I have a poor memory. And the way I account for that poor memory is I've got really good systems. I track things, I write things down, I've got a lot of discipline. And so as I was sharing this with them, there was this shift, and I could feel it in the air, in the environment. And so I got curious, and I said, what's going on? What's happening? And somebody said, well, talk about being vulnerable. I don't know. I want to share with you, if it's safe, that I'm really glad you're telling me that, because every time we have a one-on-one meeting and you follow it up with writing, I feel like you are micromanaging or you don't trust me. And now I'm realizing that it's your system that you've put in place so that you remember what we discussed and what the action items are. Oh, wow. Okay. I never realized that was the impact. And somebody else said, yeah, okay, me too. I wonder, why are you sending me an email about something when I'm 2 doors down? Why don't you just come and talk to me? And I thought, oh my gosh, that was an unintended consequence of what you need to know about working with me. I like to have things in writing so that I can go back and remind myself, instead of being embarrassed and forgetting, or having to go back and bug somebody and say, hey, what did we decide in that meeting? What are we going to do? And so I share this with you because I think there's great value in identifying what are your idiosyncrasies. What would be helpful for someone to know about working with you? what's your user's manual? And in being thoughtfully fit, it's all about being thoughtful in your life with yourself and with others, that internal lens and that external lens. So the first part is, if you remember, building your thoughtfully fit core, you pause, think, act. So the first thing is to pause. Well, you're taking the pause right now. You're hitting the pause button by giving yourself space and time to listen to this and to do some personal growth and reflection. The think is to ask some questions. If you remember, anytime that you ask questions, it triggers a spark to think. And I had written down some questions that I thought might be valuable for you to think about. What are your expectations and what are your needs? Whether you are a manager and you have direct reports, or maybe you're on a team and you want to share that with your colleagues, or maybe you're a parent or a step parent, or you have your aging parents that have just moved in with you. Taking some time to think about what are your expectations and needs of that scenario. And also, again, the think on the external is asking others questions, asking them, what are your expectations and your needs? It also in the think, so what are your idiosyncrasies? I've shared a couple of mine. I have a poor memory. I get short and impatient when I'm stressed out, when I'm late. I have a high value for being on time. And if somebody's late or I'm late, I work on it. I'm trying, but I can feel my body get tense. So what are yours? Things that you know happen when you get stressed. And what do you like when you're under stress? What do others need to know about you? Which requires you to pause and think, what do I need to know about myself? And then from that new awareness you're having from pausing and thinking and asking yourself these thoughtful questions, you can act in a more thoughtful and intentional and considerate way. And what that might look like, I'm going to give you an example from a former coaching client who I think did this brilliantly. Now this was, oh my gosh, I don't know if it was at least 5 years ago. I was working with an executive coaching client, and he gave me permission to share this, although I'm not going to say his name or company or location or anything. He was an executive, he was a vice president in his organization and had been for probably, I don't remember exactly, 15 years. The company, the organization was doing a search for their next president and CEO. There had been a long tenure of the previous president CEO who was going to be retiring and after a long time, and so they were undertaking this search. So this executive, I will call him Stan, reached out to me for coaching. Now, when he reached out, he said, I want coaching because I really want this position. So one of the things he said I want to do is be intentional about preparing for it. I have to do a presentation. I have to do a live presentation. I have to do an interview and a Q&A. And so we worked on his resume, his presentation skills. We worked to help him soften his approach because he was, quite cold. And he said, that's the first part of the coaching engagement. The second part of the coaching engagement will depend on what happens in the first part. He said, if I get hired and I get the position, I'd like to continue coaching with you so that I can really have my first 100 days and beyond be intentional and I can start out strong. If I don't get the position, then I want to keep coaching with you to figure out what's next, because chances are it will be time for me to move on to another organization and to look at what is next on my journey. So I thought he was being incredibly thoughtful in this process. Long story short, he got the job, which was really exciting. And he created a user's manual. So when he started, he had a leadership team that was now reporting to him. This was a big position, a big organization. Some of these people who were previously his colleagues will now be his direct reports. And so he took time and was very intentional in creating his own personal user's manual. And I thought I would share with you, with his permission, some of the things that he created. So I'm going to start by just sharing, I'm just going to give a high level in case any of this is valuable or for you. If you have a team that you are on, whether it's a volunteer position at a church or whether you are in a new position at work, or it could even be a new family dynamic. Your family is expanding, you're getting married, and you're going to now have a spouse and in-laws or stepchildren. Some of the things he created, I think, are incredibly, or maybe incredibly valuable to you on your journey. So the first question he outlined was, what do I value more? Speedy work or deliberate work? So this was a user's manual that he typed out and he gave to his leadership team. And in this case, he shared with them that there are some exceptions when there's, an urgency or crisis that demand immediate attention. With the exception of those times, he said he prefers deliberate work, not to the point of perfection. But because it's usually not worth the extra effort. But he'd rather have something done well and thought through thoroughly than have something done quickly. Second question: what are my expectations for commitment to the job beyond conventional work hours? Now, how cool if you have a new boss and they come in and say, here's what I expect from you beyond the 9 to 5 or whatever our conventional work hours are. And at this place, he said, at the senior level, there will be time outside of standard work hours expected of you. It might be working on projects without interruption or catching up on emails. Maybe it's attending events or any other number of possibilities. That's part of what it is to be on this leadership team. And he also said, I do also have the expectation that you are not checking your email regularly on vacation. He said that's essential to being able to get away, clear your mind, and come back fresh. Wow. So how cool to design his expectations and give people permission to unplug. Then he went into what are my idiosyncrasies? And he shared. He said, chewing gum, can't stand it. Okay, good to know. Don't bring keyboards to meetings. He said it's just too tempting to be distracted by doing emails, and it distracts me when you're distracted, when you're typing. Another idiosyncrasy, he said, there's probably going to be times when you'll be late. There's lots of reasons to be late to meetings, but I want you to let you know if you're late, I'm probably not going to stop the meeting and acknowledge you and bring you up to speed. It doesn't mean I'm angry or upset. It just means that I'm going to keep going because whatever it was that you calculated the opportunity cost of being somewhere else besides being on time, I trust that that was the right choice for you. And I'm not going to take the time from everybody who was there on time to hit the pause button and bring you up to speed. So just know if you're late, that's what's going to happen. Don't take it personally. I'm not angry, I'm not upset, unless it becomes a pattern. Then we need to address that because being on time is important. He talked about what kind of a leader and decision maker am I? And he shared that, he said, I work from the worst case forward scenario. So if you bring me an idea, I want you to think through it, and I'm often thinking about risk and reward. So I'd like for you to identify what are the worst case scenarios, what's the biggest risk, not just sell me on the rewards, because my mind is going to go there anyway, so that would be beneficial. He shared that he looks at things within context. So he's a systems thinker. So you don't come and expect to be able to have an idea in a vacuum and just present that. He wants to understand the broader context. He shared that he doesn't make decisions before he needs to, and that he has found that sometimes decisions work themselves out. And so he's going to be very thoughtful and ask a lot of questions and won't make a hasty decision. And he also shared that he doesn't start discussions by stating what he thinks. He already knows what he thinks. He said, I'm there because I want a different perspective. I want to hear and learn from you. And so he said, I usually won't start a conversation by stating my perspective because I don't want to shut down other ideas. Isn't this good? He talked about what will I expect from my staff and how will we work together. Now, I won't go through all of this, but he identified that for me, I'm not going to be investing in a personal friendship outside of work. Don't take it personally. It just helps me be really clear on my roles. He said, I have a lot of friends from previous organizations that our friendship blossomed after there was role clarity and not a conflict of interest. He talked about if there's something personal happening in your life that I'm going to trust and assume that you will share as much as you want to share, as much as you want me to know, and I'm not going to probe for details. So if you want me to know, I invite that, I welcome that, and I'll be there to support you. And if you don't, I'm not going to probably ask. So don't take it personally that I don't care. I just want to have some clear boundaries. Now, can you imagine how valuable that is if somebody understands that's his personality up front? Instead of being frustrated or angry or wondering, does he not like me? He talked about how will I help my employees get better at their jobs. And he identified, how he's going to help you identify your strengths and interests and maximize those. He said, I'm going to work on providing clear focus and vision and direction. And we're going to then discuss how to mirror and match your strengths with the focus and the direction. He talked about performance reviews. Again, I'm not going to go into all the details. And then he talked about what are weaknesses of mine that you should know about and how am I working to improve? Now, he says, the good news is I'm aware of these and I'm working on trying to get better. So, and then he outlined a bunch. I'll give just a couple of examples. He said, I don't give enough praise. That's what I know about myself. So feel free to remind me and ask for it for yourself or a team member. If you need it and want it and I'm not giving it, I'm working on that. He said, similarly, I don't give a lot of emotional feedback. And so if you would like that and I'm working on it, if I'm not giving it, ask for it. He said, sometimes I don't give clear deadlines and timelines. And so if I'm working on that. If I haven't, please feel free to ask me. Is this a priority? What's the next steps? What are the deadlines? He said, sometimes I wait too long to make decisions, which is interesting because earlier he said, what you should know about me is that I don't make quick decisions. Our strengths taken to the extreme are oftentimes our weaknesses. So he's very deliberate and thoughtful in asking questions to make the best decision. And sometimes that's a weakness, that he can wait too long to make decisions. Again, a whole bunch more examples. I won't go through all of them. 2 more questions, actually 3 more. What is my process for handling conflicts? He said directly. I'm going to be direct and I'm going to focus on what's in your control and what's in my control. And hopefully we're going to handle it in the moment. And if I don't, and you sense that there's something there, I'd like to ask you to get curious in the moment and be direct with me as well. When it comes to mistakes, what's the best way for you to come forward? And he said specifically, and he went into if we're going to really be innovative and we're going to drive our organization forward, we have to be willing to make mistakes. So that's not a problem. And if you do make a mistake, ask for some time with me. And then tell me directly and completely what went wrong. And then this is interesting. He said, tell me the worst case scenario and build up from there. He said, my mind is wired such that I'll go to the worst case scenario anyway. So as you're talking and trying to frame this up in a positive light, I'm already going to the worst case scenario. So this is something you should know about me. Start there and then work up. And if possible, bring some solutions. Though if you don't know solutions, don't let that prevent you from coming and sharing the mistake. That's okay. We can work through solutions together. And be prepared to walk me through what was learned and what you're going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again in the future. So he's prepping people. He's designing that alliance and creating that user's manual. What do you need to know about me? And then he had an open-ended question like, what other information would be helpful for you to know about how to work with me? Cool, isn't it? This is all about being thoughtfully fit. If you remember, when you are thoughtfully fit, you're mindful, you have self-awareness internally, and you're considerate. There's my cat. She's always got to make a debut. Yak butter. You're considerate with others externally. How do you do that? Build your core. So here's your workout. I want you to pause and think and act. Take some time. You're already pausing. You're already thinking. Ask yourself those questions. What do others need to know about me? What would be valuable if I were going to write a user's manual? And maybe you write it. How cool would that be if you actually wrote it out? And then anytime you go into a new relationship, a new job, a new situation, you can update it with new awareness that you're having and share it with others. And ask them to do the same. And then after you have thought about it and created that user's manual, those operating instructions, then you can act thoughtfully about who and what and when and how you want to share it. I love being here with you every week. I love the engagement I get. I'm oftentimes hear from people at the event this morning even. I was going to write something in a comment on your video last week. It sparked and it was so fascinating. So if it sparks a thought or a comment, I'd love for you to jot it down and let's get the dialogue going. If this is something you've done, if you have other questions that you are thinking of that you might ask yourself that would help to create your own personal user's manual, post them in the comments or shoot me an email. I'd love to learn together. That's probably one of the greatest things I've enjoyed about these Thoughtfully Fit Thursdays videos is it gives me an opportunity to pause and to think about what would be most valuable to share with you. And then to try to act more thoughtfully in my own life. So thanks for joining me, whether you're here live or whether you are watching the recording afterwards. I will be back next Thursday for a Facebook Live, but also know that every Wednesday I post shorter workouts. So the Facebook Live tend to be 10, 20, 30 minutes long. We do a deeper dive. The Wednesday workouts are little snippets. They're 2, 3, 4 minutes intended to help you get a little dose of some kind of personal development, professional development awareness with a challenge for that week. And then also I send out a weekly tips, Thoughtfully Fit tips by blog. So if you haven't yet signed up, I invite you to do that. You can go to darcyloma.com and sign up for the weekly Thoughtfully Fit tips as well. And that's usually short and sweet, an article about something I've learned or something with my coaching clients, organizations that I think might be valuable for you. Thank you for joining me, everybody. Have a terrific weekend. Take care.